doesn't it?
I'm here with Tommy Shichtel of Goon Lagoon and Josh Kaufman of Local Legend Recording, two studio nerds. And really, that's the whole reason that I cooked this up, was just to set you guys loose and let you riff, and then I sit here and go, what did he? Now tomorrow when I try to do it the stupid way, I'll see if I can remember what you guys said. So
all of this knowledge is not very useful for the most part. But, to us it's invaluable, but it's fun.
It is. Well, we were chatting, actually. We blew our wad in the control room already, talking about, catching up and talking about fun stuff, like the session musicians that we use and stuff.
Yeah.
And how important that is, to the sounds, and how they could even, if you use the same people, it becomes kind of like the Wrecking Crew.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you can
it becomes their sound.
Your little mini crew. I remember when I was making records with a buddy in St. Louis, I always admired that they had 6 or 7 guys that were playing on most records, because they were just excellent, and they would come and they would...
Like Muscle Shoals.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it just had that vibe of collaborative effort, and it was cool. And there's a lot of good players in town, so...
Do you guys use the same...
We probably use some of the same, but, different in a lot of ways too, I would imagine.
I try to find, there's a lot of great musicians in town, but I know what I'm looking for usually, so I'll, cherry pick certain guys, and a lot of the guys I use are older, quite a bit older, older than me anyway.
Is there a reason? Is that just coincidence, or?
Well, usually they're not as feisty, and they'll listen to you. I have a funny story about one guy I use to play piano. He can do anything, the Floyd Kramer stuff, Thelonious Monk. He can do anything, and I wanted a really nice Hammond organ thing going on, but I told him I was in the control room and he was out here by himself doing an overdub, and I said to him, I go, just don't get too crazy with it. And he goes, well, what do you mean? Because those guys can get And he goes, I go, well, just play it like you just won a $5 scratch off ticket. So he did the whole thing, he got done. I looked at the artist that was there, and I was shaking my head while I was going and he's like, this is great. And I'm like, no. Get done, and I hit the talkback mic. I go, make it a 10. And he's like, he totally knew exactly what I meant, because, $10 scratch off. He wasn't as exciting as I wanted him to be. So
it is great when you get people who can work off that kind of specific direction.
Yeah.
I need 5% more purple, or that kind of thing, where they just kind of get it, and they can work with you, and you get a little language going.
It's not always the best musicians that I like to use. It's usually the people that can fake the most in more areas, and listen to the song. That's so important. To me, that's number one, is being able to understand where the song's going. Just because you're a hotshot guitar player or piano player or whatever, I'm not bringing you in here all the time to do what you really can do. Yeah. It's usually just understanding the song.
It's not a solo performance. No. It's all to honor the song, to service the song.
Right.
And those guys are first on the list.
And it's always about the song first.
Yeah.
Always.
Has to be.
Yeah.
It's better usually too if at least in some cases, where people who write songs and come in with that kind of mentality.
Yeah.
And then they're going to play like that too, because they understand that
exactly.
It's all about the sum of the parts.
Right.
About their individual solos and things like that. So.
In Space, I remember when I was working on a Concussions record back in 2008, and I remember at the time just thinking wow, this is the best thing we've ever done. This is great. We finally hit the gear.
Yeah.
And then about a year later, I just I was listening to it, and I was like, oh my God, I filled up every space where I didn't let it breathe.
Yeah.
And I remember telling Billy Vitz, our drummer, that the next time we come in, it's not gonna be a free-for-all. We're really gonna sit down and do these songs justice. And Billy was pretty busy, and he let me do it too. I tied one of his hands behind his back, and he was fine with it. I said, "You're too busy with what you're doing, And I said, I just really want it simple. Of course, I let them with the carrot that we're going to put a bunch of percussion on top of it when it's done. So the closer that we get just to a backbeat or whatever, the better. And man, the records after that to me were like so much better because there's air there. You know, so
it's so important to leave that beginning phase with not everything filled in
I'm
the
sure
gaps.
you've done it too, right?
Oh, 1,000 times.
I bet everybody.
And then it's just a mute session until you figure out what's the core.
Yeah.
Right? And then you get to the core, those 3 or 4 instruments.
Yeah.
And then you can start building on top of that. But sometimes you get so far in the weeds that it's just...
And sometimes those 3 or 4 instruments, it's like you're watching the Let It Be. I don't know if you guys have seen that. The Let It Be documentary. How great those songs sounded just with once Billy Preston came in. You really didn't need anything more. Phil Spector probably screwed some of those songs up. Now I know that we hear.
I would argue that he absolutely did.
Well, yeah, I mean you get the Naked record, the Glyn Johns stuff, but our brains are still listening to those songs where you hear the strings coming in and stuff, and you wonder, and then when you don't hear it, you're like, whoa, this actually sounds stripped down and raw. You know, this might even be better. It's more emotional.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
So
I think you and I talked about it a couple weeks ago, but what I really liked about that documentary was that, you know, those 4 guys are held up here on a pedestal, and what you noticed is that they didn't come in with any better ideas than any of us would have come in. And, you know, the magic happened somewhere, probably in the control room, but they really were just messing around and it turned into something.
I don't know about you, but I enjoyed the part where Glyn Johns is moving PA speakers, 2 inches left and right to make sure that the bleed is controlled in whatever way they possibly could, because they're not using headphones.
No headphones.
And seeing them, that was an effective scene, because it was extensively long. And Peter Jackson's kind of a maniac when it comes to that.
Yeah.
It's a very long documentary, but it's like, I think that was a 8-minute thing of him kind of going back to the control room, moving it an inch, listening, going back.
You're probably one of 12 people worldwide that noticed what was happening.
Wow.
In that
And I told my in-laws, and they were not as enthused as you were a couple weeks ago.
Why would you do that? Yeah.
Oh, that's great, Josh. Yeah, cool. That's just a cool story.
Yeah, well, that's the studio geekery that we have. We think about things like that, and reflections, and having a microphone that's rejective, so it's not picking up this guitar that much. But I love the bleed. In fact, I was thinking about what you might ask. And one of the things about the Goon that I always try to do is, when people come in to look at the place and they say, well, what can we do? Prior to coming in, pre-production, I said, practice, 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 and practice together, because you guys are going to play together. We're not going to be stacking parts. We're not going for a drum sound. We're going for a band sound to get the room, the sound of the room, the sound of the bleed. And if you guys play your parts right, that's when it sounds magical, and the interaction that you get,
with all that, the open mic that isn't even being used as your room mic kind of thing, the talkback mic that gets compressed and used as your drum crush mic. All those things are like the magic that happened in the past because of necessity, that you sort of have to trick people into doing.
And it's usually found by mistakes too.
Yeah, right.
For instance, I'm working on a new song right now that when it was being done, it was known that the vocals, and this is how I like to do it anyway, there's going to be scratch vocals, because you just can't, in a room like this, you're just going to have too much noise with the drums. But there was a break there where the drummer did something, and that scratch vocal mic was on at one time, and I'm like, oh man, we're taking that little part right there, and that's going to be in the song.
Yeah.
It sounds like someone knocking at a back door. And that's
love that.
And it was never thought of that was going to be part of the song, but it's going to be.
Yeah. When I built this studio at Local Legend, I thought about this place and kept that in mind, because I wanted that one room feel with a little more, I have maybe slightly more isolation because I have amp blocks and stuff like that, but I wanted that feel, because you sort of have to tell the bands that are coming in, this is what's happening. And if you don't practice, if you aren't prepared, it won't sound cohesive.
Right.
And we're not going to a grid. And like
Right.
that, those type of things have to start at the very beginning so that the groundwork is laid. Like, we're going to create an organic thing here. And it's kind of up to you whether it sounds cohesive or not. No, I can help you. But, you know, it's like, it's a tough conversation sometimes to have with bands. But like, that's the magic. And all that kind of stuff never happens if you don't have, if it's all like gridded out, each individual instrument, all that chaos, all that wonder, all that, where did that come from? What does that sound? That goes away.
I've also noticed that you guys probably are saying some version of this without really saying it, but you know, nowadays, especially with digital stuff, I can sit at home or at the studio and do all the parts myself. It's cool. I think you can tell there was only one heartbeat in that recording studio at a time. And it was all the same.
And it can be magic.
person.
It can be beautiful that way too, where a singular vision like leads to something because it is that crazy person in their head and they're doing all the parts and they have a certain vibe. They play drums a weird way. They play guitar with their fingers, or they play a bass with their fingers, and it's a whole vibe with whatever's coming through them. And that can totally work. But you know, I always find that at least with band recordings, if you're not doing it live, it ends up being stale.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned something about studio geekery earlier, and I wanted to touch on that because I might be wrong, but you know what you have going on, Tommy, here nowadays is really unusual. It's not like we have the option of analog. That's all we're doing when you come into Goon Lagoon.
Yeah.
And you, Josh, look like you have a side hustle speaker repair business going.
Right.
And I still nerd out every time I go over there.
You repair speakers?
I do that, but I also make them into microphones.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which is what he's referring to.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So there's
okay. Gotcha.
Just because they're all sure about
speakers all over the
I
studio.
see. Okay.
He's like, well, he's just messing around. No, that was the kick mic.
Ah, nice.
You know?
Yeah.
I found Jack Joseph Puig uses old JBL speakers as his room mics, and he has 3 of them, and it's just an enormous sound. It sounds really cool. He puts them through a Compex, and you know, it goes all levy breaks, all that kind of stuff, and he goes nuts with it, and it sounds really cool. So I kind of aped that and took basically old sub speakers from hi-fis, and then use those as microphones, which is very easy to make.
Yeah.
So you just flip the wires essentially.
And what? Because we're not listening to that right now. What is the point of that?
It has a unique sound. It's an interesting. I mean, you don't make a microphone that sounds like that because it's lo-fi sounding. It's kind of weird. But it also gets down to the really low lows because, you know, a microphone's essentially just the diaphragm, and if you have a large diaphragm, a 15-inch speaker, you're going to get, you know, more response from that. So I get down to like 40 hertz in those things, and you can get the low lows and extension from those speakers than you would get from any microphone. So and you could do digital tricks and stuff like that, but it just ends up being cooler in my opinion.
I've seen some engineers do something similar to that too with they like saying into the headphones. Like use you know, I've seen people do that. But I haven't done any experiment like that. That's cool. I'd like to hear.
They're a cool sound. It's I did a whole Elliott Smith tune with just that speaker. You know, drums and piano and vocals and everything all layered together, and it came out surprisingly. I mean, EQ the crap out of it, and, you know, like really try to sculpt it into something just as an exercise to see whether it was possible. And they're cool. This sounds cool. It sounds bedroom recordy and you know, but in a cool way. I thought so.
So Tommy, to ask kind of the same question of you, analog seems like kind of a pain in the ass. Why would you do it that way? Why would you exclusively do it that way?
Sometimes I do ask myself why. Excuse me. When I started recording my own bands, I started on a TAC 3340, which was 4-track. Then I upgraded to a Tascam 38, which was 8-track. And I remember like, even that Fuzz Rights record was like vocals, as soon as the vocal's done, and it had a foot switch. I'd play a guitar solo right there, and I'd quick have to get out before the vocals came in, and I'd like kill a vocal or a word, and stuff because it's not working. And so I quick hit the stop button, and so when I got the 24 track, I was like, I've got an MCI Sony, and I'm like, oh man, I'll never ever need anything more than this. Yeah. And I could use more, but I think the analog, it keeps me like in check on not having 192 things where you just got one little chime on one track or just layering. It keeps things simple for me. I think a lot of it is my favorite records were done probably on analog tape. Also, I think that there's something with the low end that I hear that's just that the digital. I've heard some people do digital stuff where I swear it was analog, but my ears, I can't. Anytime I've helped somebody out on that, I just can't get the digital to sound like that. But I know I can get it easily with my MCI with those transformers and stuff and the microphones that I use. It sounds to me like Pro Tools is big this way, and analog sounds like it's got more depth this way to me, to my ears when I listen. And that's where I feel like it's more pleasing to my ears that way, and it might just be, I hate to say it, but it might be something as simple as it's just sexier to me. And I don't feel like I'm not knocking anybody because I don't think there's any kind of rules or anything, but for me, I can't stare at a screen and do a guitar part and hit a button and do anything. And the smell, I mean, you can smell the tape. And,
yeah.
I mean, there is a sexiness to it, Now, editing, in the perfect world, I should probably, get a rig where I can edit better and do that stuff instead of, I remember I was just doing this one band and they said they counted in the first 5 seconds I had like something like 13 or 14 moves in the first 4 seconds of the song. And to remember all that, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
So that, that's kind of like where I kind of go, okay, this is where I'm being ridiculous,
And you're all digital, right?
Well, I'm hybrid. I mean, all my front end's all analog, and then my recording medium's all digital. I just like the workflow of it better for me. But I do agree and appreciate the sound, and I think that depth thing, the forward back thing, is the main thing that people who work on digital workstations struggle with. And there's lots of tricks to get around it. Mainly, it's just using tape and sort of as an effect as opposed to as a recording medium. That's why I use it. Is I'll bounce things to tape and then bounce it back in or to cassette and whatever. It depends on what kind of sound I'm going for. And I feel like I can get my results faster that way because I grew up on Pro Tools and went to recording school and did the whole thing. And I'm very efficient with a keyboard and stuff like that. And it just helps me kind of keep a session rolling so that I can not waste my own time, other people's time, and hopefully still get a cool result, with all the analog compressors, and I have a API console and a Trident console and things that are not a digital front end that I think give the vibe straight away. And then I kind of use Pro Tools just as a tape machine itself. And then mixing is, mostly in the box for me. But with using those kind of bouncing out to things, bringing them back in, and, it's a little bit of a rigmarole, and it would be a learning curve if I were to ask Tommy to come to my place and produce a record, same as it would be for me to come to his. And
would you guys be like snobby assholes about it to each other?
I don't think so. I mean,
it doesn't seem like you would.
No,
be.
I appreciate everything. Yeah. That, people that are really good at stuff, it just amazes me. And it's like funny when you're in the studio here, you get done, they want to hear it again and again and again, and you'll hear like a comment like, man, I love the sound of that rewinding tape. I go, well, that'll get old after a while because I've made a lot of money by rewinding tape. It takes a while, And it's the whole flow of the session. You can hit a button and you're hearing this part. Yeah, it takes a while to get back, but
just a different mentality, a different way of setting up sessions too. It doesn't I I think if you manage people's expectations about what things are going to be like in the studio, you're going to be fine. And in any way you want to start a project, as long as you set those expectations and manage them while you're doing it, it's fine.
Yeah, it is. And I think that once the biggest thing is getting people comfortable in the studio. This obviously is not a stuffy place at all. When I built this, I wanted it to feel like you were in someone's living room recording. And his is like that too. It's just like comfortable. I've been in studios that felt really like, almost like a strip mall or something.
Dentist office.
This isn't like have a vibe to me. You want to be able to turn down the lights and just put people as close, just get them out of that mode that they're recording and just being an artist. And I think once they settle into that thing, you could record them. If they're really good musicians, you could record them on anything and it's going to sound good. It really is.
Great.
Once you just shift them into that place, So, I believe me, I've thought about it. But I just never pull the trigger. It's like, if I could get this, or if I could get this really great compressor, or this really great microphone, I always go back to that.
You know. And I lean that way too. It just ends up being the recording medium is the only thing that really separates us in that way. As far as I think we both are gear hunters and lovers of microphones and compressors and things that are unique and cool. And if you look at his rack in there and my rack, it's not totally dissimilar, different pieces of gear, but it's all in search of that thing that's going to get you there quicker, that has the vibe, the inspiration, that,
As an outsider, one thing that I like about what both of you guys do is that there's, in your kit, there's several pieces of gear that you use quite a bit that is not what you would expect someone like you to have, because it's clearly a piece of shit and doesn't work consistently or well, and it seems like still both of you guys like routinely go to that shitty little thing that does that one thing really well.
Character.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I finally found a level lock, by the way.
Oh, nice.
So I have one now.
Yeah.
So
speaking of shitty equipment.
Speaking of really bad equipment that sounds like garbage, but for some reason is cool, is this Shure level lock.
Yeah.
That was a podium condenser microphone where even on the front switch, you see inches away from the podium as opposed to a threshold.
Yeah.
That's
tells you where to put it.
Right. Exactly. So you're 6 inches, 12 and 18, I think.
Right. Yeah.
And it just sounds kind of like trash, but then you add it to a drum track or sometimes guitars or something like that. It can just wild up a sound and make it. I mean, you've used it to affect more than anyone probably I've ever met. And it sounds awesome every time he uses it. Mine's, I don't know, you gotta take a look at mine or something.
It's like if you can make things sound broke, that's pretty
broke
close
in a good way.
Yeah. There was a band that did that on a track. It was famous. I can't remember what the band's name was, and that's where it all started. And a lot of the stuff that some of the people that like records that have come out of here, I laugh because I think to myself, that's the record you're talking about? We used realistic microphones purposely on that. And, like these M Audio mic pre's that would plug right in with, and 8 tracks, and it's like, you get all this gear, and stuff, and then you go back and listen to it and you go, what it boils down to is like, it's the person that's recording and it's their ears. Because I could go to his studio, not necessarily use his equipment, but he could do it and I could say, hey, do this, do this, do this. It'd sound like the Goon. He could come here, do the same thing, and it'd sound like Local Legend.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it basically what it is, it's your ears. And I like the brown sound. I like things kind of darker and ribbon kind of sounding, punchy and a mid-low. Sometimes it can sound muddy, but I kind of like that stuff.
Yeah. I'm less that way, but I still am too far that way for most people.
Yeah.
That's like the biggest comment is it's too dark.
Into the brown sound?
Yeah. It's always a dark sound. I've always had dark mixes, and I was just like that.
Yeah.
And I do use a lot of ribbons too. We have similar mic choices in that way.
Yeah.
So, If you end up using a lot of ribbon microphones and you're not EQing the shit out of them, it just ends up being a culmination at the end of a record where you're just like, well, it just kind of has that vibe because they're really rich in those lower mid-range, up to 3K, and then kind of rolls off. But
it's what they would call like it's warmer sounding, people always say that, oh, it's really warm sounding, but it's a balance of finding that warmth and having the air too, you still want it. A friend of mine, he goes, well, don't you think it needs a little more high-end information? And I'm like, well, you're 73, maybe your ears are shot. It sounds pretty bright to me up where it needs to be. You could put a little tambourine up there just to kind of make people like you happy, but I don't know, I like sludge. One record that people always talk about that sounded like shit was Born Again by Black Sabbath, and I always found that to just match the intensity of Ian Gillan and Tony Iommi and Bill Ward, Geezer Butler at that time. It just sounds like it's supposed to sound. It's supposed to sound messy and weird.
Yeah.
If it was clean, it would just sound like it take that vibe out of there. It sounds evil. I did some records with Beast in the Field. I used all ribbon mics on them, and it sounds like it just came from hell.
I love that.
Were they as loud in the studio as they are?
I did
live?
it once with them. I did their first record, World Ending, and Jordan brought all his amps and put them in that room. And I could have put the microphone probably outside of the building and got a good tone. It was that loud. If someone was knocking on the door, the cops were here, there's no way I would have known. I was going off the meters on the thing. And then we listened back, I'm like, what is going on? And I looked out there, like during the playback, and because he had three mics on his amps, and one of the mics was just basically Penguin walking around the whole room. It sounded so cool. On the mix, we ended up leaving it on there.
Yeah.
So it just kind of like almost this like, I can say this on Polish, but what is that surround sound thing called?
Atmos.
Yeah, it's Polish Atmos. So I mean, it's like I couldn't believe what I was like seeing, and it worked, and that all three of the records that I did for him were live. Now the second and third record, he used all my little premieres, and I think we used like the 76 Premiere, the 88, and then I think we might have used that Gibson. So there was like different tones. It sounds just as big. A microphone doesn't know how big an amp is.
Right.
It really
Right. Yeah.
It's really like.
So after you recorded that, was he like, man, I've been lugging these stacks around for years and I could have just been...
No, I think that's there was part of their show, because they did the whole baptism thing where they would stick people's head in the cabinets. Like, the drummer would while he's getting all this feedback. You can't really do the same with these little 50s amp,
not quite. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's fun experimenting. I used to experiment more on my records, because obviously you don't want people paying you to kind of go down that road. Right. But then that's where you learn the stuff or your friends' bands. They're always your guinea pigs, and then the stuff that worked, you go, hey, what about this?
Yeah, exactly.
I think I did something with one of those Electrolux, those old chrome Electrolux with the rails, the vacuums that used to pull them around. I took one. I have one at home, and I took the thing off and mic'd a thing from far away like that with just the tremolo going. And slowed the tape down, and it sounded just like a spaceship landing. Yeah. But it had a really howled out weird sound to it. It was great.
It's like that Sylvia Massey tube trick, the garden hose that she has. You ever seen that?
No.
She coils a garden hose around the drum and then mic at the end, and it has this, basically removes the cymbals from the kit, and then Uber compresses it, of course, and it's a cool sound. It's similar to what you would do with a level lock or whatever, but it has this kind of otherworldly, demonic type of sound.
Right.
I use it on like System of a Down and stuff like that. So she's cool with that kind of stuff too.
Yeah. Well, she did all the Tool records
too.
So I'm sure, wasn't she the one that didn't they push a piano off a cliff and mic it or something.
Probably. Yeah.
I think that's a really valuable, I use it all the time, a valuable thing to have in your toolkit, which is, what's the dumbest possible way I could do this? Let's try that first, because worst case, we've confirmed that was a really dumb way to do it.
Oh, yeah.
And usually that's where the discoveries are made.
Yeah. Your throne mic, I'm sure, was one of those, experiments or accidents. It just sat there. It was a talkback mic that got thrown under the kit, and then it's kind of cool. It's getting the beater and the under snares at the same time. Interesting, or whatever,
Yeah, it's really weird. And again, we go back on stumbling upon this stuff. I had a band in here. Trying to think what band it was. There were two different bands, but I think the one was Lost System. And the drummer Michael, he has this great big, all his drums are like found in the trash kind of things, and he has this great big kick, and he hits it, and it doesn't sound like a kick. It just sounds like almost like a muted gong or something. And I had Michael in that room singing. They like to do everything live, and I said, just make sure that door's shut. So they'd pull it shut, and I'd have like, at the time I didn't have that stopper on there, so that we'd put a blanket there, and it'd sound fine. And you do a take, people walk out, they talk, and they forgot to shut it, and it was cracked about that much. And I remember during tracking it, I'm like, why do the drums sound this way? And he's singing, and I'm like, do I walk out there and freak him out? I'm like, no, I'm just gonna wait. And then I walked out, and sure enough, the door was cracked. They ended up using it because the drums almost sounded like very similar to like the In the Air Tonight thing going on, because it would go away when he would sing, and then it'd come back and it'd just do this weird slap. It's so cool sounding. And it's the only time I got that sound in the studio. I don't know if I could get it again. It's just like
it's the original gate, I guess.
Yeah. It's just like it was a perfect storm how it happened.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The where he was standing, where the mics were, you just luck out on some things like that. They always talk about the levee break sound, They wanted that something in that big corridor, and but did they really know it was going to sound that great? Probably not.
Yeah.
It was all happenstance. And I'm sure there's some weird compression on it too.
We used to live in a big house in Heritage Hill, and I tried so it had a big stairwell. I tried the Led Zeppelin 4 version, but the problem is that I suck at recording, so it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. But physically, the space was there. It should have been cool, but
there's a silo out by my parents' house that I've always
Did you try it?
Well, I wanted to buy it so I could try it, but it's on somebody else's property. It looks really cool. That's why I had at Local Legend, I took out the second floor and one of the areas, like about a third of it, just so I could have natural room sound, because I was so tired of replicating that in different ways.
Well, don't you also in the basement?
I do. I have a chamber,
the big reverb chamber.
Yeah, I took all the HVAC out of there just so I could have an empty room, and it has a unique sound. It sounds like nothing else.
Do you end up using it?
I do. I use it on pretty much every record. It's my guitar chamber essentially right now. I think it needs a little more diffusion to be a vocal chamber. It's a little bit too honky right now, but it works for guitars. But like you look at those chambers and they're nothing special, Mine is actually too big because it goes too far. So I'm getting too many other weird reflections that are coming back after things. And so I got to build it down there to sort of tune it a little bit.
The Abbey Road pipes.
Right, yeah, those circular things and then at Abbey Road, the microphones are behind those stanchions. So you're kind of eliminating a lot of that first reflection type of stuff. But it's just fun to have in your studio just to like experiment with. And for guitars, it just like adds a depth that no plug-in or no,
And it's unique.
It's unique,
to your studio.
Yes.
You don't have a plug-in that's going to say Local Legend, or like Capitol Studio.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, if I can monetize it, we'll see. I was thinking about the other day. I was making my own Mellotron sounds, but with my own, recording them. So you do your own vocal loops and that kind of thing. And then make it a little Josh-tron.
Yeah.
And see how that works. So that'll be my next. Well, it could be totally terrible, but I'm going to spend 3 hours on it and see what happens because that's what I do.
Joe Meek did it.
Yeah.
Did stuff like that.
Yeah.
So he had all kinds. If you look in his studio, he had all kinds of these like loops.
Yeah.
He just would run those things and just manipulate them, and he was the reason I got into recording. Was just this amazing. I mean, you listen to those records still now. It's like, how did he get those sounds with what he had? Is beyond me. Ears. It's his ears, and he was completely crazy. Yeah. And he was, which is a good thing, I think, for people that are going to be artists and experiment a little bit. He pushed the boundaries. Before he got there, everybody was wearing lab coats, and you couldn't go into the red here, and distortion was bad, and he pushed all those envelopes, really kind of changed everything.
Yeah, experimentation with recording. Recording was a very clinical pastime for a long time.
Yeah, it was.
And all that pushing the boundaries of gear and stuff like that was guys like Joe Meek and others. I've got us to this point where we can kind of have this little playground and play around with stuff.
I wish actually I experimented a little bit more. I find myself not doing the tricks as much as I used to, like little things, even like putting a microphone. I did one session actually not too long ago where I put a microphone right on, almost touching the piano wires, just to get some. If it was in the right key, it would sound good, kind of thing. Push it up. No, that's not the right song.
Yeah.
But it's funny because I really was experimenting a lot, but a lot of it is time, and you got to have the energy to it too. And if I was doing too many records a year, where it just became like, okay, I got to make sure that we get this band done in this amount of time. Yeah. So the experimentation usually comes on my own projects. I think I need to do that more, though.
Well,
you're starting to inspire me.
So how many?
It's the reason I started writing music again was for that reason. I mean, I like writing music as well, but I really wanted something to just let my mind run with certain ideas. Yeah. And it's not like I'm doing the craziest things in the world, but it was just time thinking about different things to do. And like you said, when you're getting paid for someone, you don't want to mess around with their money and their time. Like, you want to execute for them. So
I was going to ask you about that too, but what was the phrase that you used?
Paralysis by analysis.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Finally we're just like, screw it, I'm just going to do this, and it doesn't matter if it's any good or if anybody likes it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do it. Was that like a good reset for your brain, or do you have to fight the urge to over-engineer it? Because I've known other engineers and producers that record will never come out because they'll never stop tweaking that.
It's hard as an engineer to put on a record because you think it needs to sound perfect, right? And whatever that means to you, whether it's cool or has a vibe or all that kind of stuff. And so I just never put out anything because it was just like, well, it's not perfect. So yeah, I just kind of stripped those away and just said, I don't know, whatever. It's more for me than it is for anyone else. And I hope that clients are going to benefit from it because I'm going to be able to experiment and try that new thing that ends up on someone else's record to perfect effect that was halfway there on my record or whatever. But it's fun. Also, making music's fun. I like writing songs. So why else am I owning a studio if I'm not going to put out, this is the whole reason I got into this thing in the first place, was writing songs, recording them with buddies of mine. And it's magical. It's fun. Yeah. And removing that magic because I'm nervous that someone's not going to like it is a silly, juvenile thing to think, so it's just like, got to move on.
Well, and, at my studio, which is a photo studio, it's kind of hard to get to my desk because I have at least this many amps sitting behind me piled just in case. And on one hand, that's like really bad ADHD management, but also I've found that whatever your chosen medium, in quote unquote, your chosen medium is, it makes you better at that one if you are constantly at least trying.
Yeah.
any other medium that occurs to you.
Yeah.
Because it makes different connections. So if you're always doing just what you do, you're gonna end up being pretty rigid about what you think is the proper way.
Yeah, even if it's super cool, it gets stale after a while.
And I imagine it makes you a better producer to do your own music, and obviously you know that too, but now you've jumped to the other side of the board. So now even though you knew the language, now you can speak more from the inside, even better than you could before, probably.
Yeah, there's a level of empathy that you have for artists that you otherwise don't tap into as readily, I would say, if you're not doing it yourself. Not every engineer is a songwriter or puts out music, but for me, it just helps me focus on why I did this in the first place, why I like making records, and that's clarifying. You get down to the nitty gritty of it. It's I just enjoy different textures. I like songs. I like classic recordings, and that's what I want to do. So I'm going to effort to do that. And if I fail, and fine, but I'll get better. Hopefully it leads to something great. That's all I can do, really.
What are you guys working on now?
Bunch of records kind of on the docket right now. Mixing a Hannah Rose Graves record. Bree Stoner's got some new stuff coming out. Cameron really just put out a record not too long ago. Doing my stuff. I'm doing my kids record with Kyle Rashi. We started a kids band. I don't know if I told you that.
No.
So we're doing kids music.
Nice.
Yeah. So we do a song a month. So we're putting out fun, educational, original kids music. We've got a.
I like that "Don't Say Yuck" song.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Kyle's he's just a genius. He just churns out songs all the time, and so he was writing all this kids music, and we just thought, well, hey, it's another fun way of trying different things. I was orchestrating strings, which I just normally wouldn't do, but it's for a kids record, so it's pretty rudimentary. It doesn't have to be super avant-garde and cool. But yeah, it was a little muscle. I was all right, I've taken theory. I can kind of get into that. But it's fun. And Kyle is just so prolific. He just comes up with great songs. So yeah, we have 2 songs out right now for that band. And then my own record is in the fall. So
when we first met, this might have even been before the pandemic. I sent him some solo stuff. Yeah. And then he goes, man, I got to get going on mine. And I was like, oh, that's really cool that,
it's definitely
you said
inspired
that to me
yeah.
because I was like, oh, this is a good thing. That's a big problem at our house so I'm sitting on this solo record, and I've got a bunch of songs, and I think it should just be an EP because it's pretty heavy. It's a lot of divorce songs and stuff that I never thought would come out. And it is pretty what the heck? I can't put it out under anything else, Mm-hmm. And so my out is, I still haven't come up with a band name. So anytime I think of a good band name, someone else already took it. Yeah. So I'm I don't want it as Tommy Shichtel because these songs are so personal. Plus, if you have a band name, it seems like some other people are involved. Yeah. And some of the songs are. There's other drummers and stuff on there and stuff. But they're very personal songs. So anyways, I've got 6 songs that he's now inspiring me to release it because I was waiting for him to release it. But when people hear it, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, that's really heavy, man.
Is Tommy okay?
He wasn't at the time, but he is now.
We need to do a little check.
Yeah, right.
Buddy.
So there's some stuff in there, and they've got the content is kind of funny too. It's pretty dark, but so that's one thing I'm kind of wrapping up. I've got another song I got to mix and stuff, but projects going on. The funny thing is, I kind of told a bunch of people I didn't want to record anybody for a while. I needed a break. I was doing an average of 10 to 12 records a year for 5-6 years, and I think it when you go home and your wife is playing music and cooking, and you tell her, can I just please have silence in this house? That it's time to okay. And I took some time, And it inspired me to start working on that new B-Sides record, which we finished in a short time. So you got to get away to see how much you love it again.
Yeah, that's true.
The last thing, because I do electric work too, both of them as well. The last thing you want to do is be in the studio and wish you were crawling around in someone's attic, doing electric work.
Yeah.
I kind of was getting to that point.
Yeah.
Not because I was recording people I didn't want to record. It was just like, I think I was like starting to hit a wall. So now Emily's going to see this and she's going to be like, see, you have to, by the fall, you have to release it right when Josh is.
Yeah, you definitely put a deadline on it.
I know. Now, is it a full length?
It will be.
Okay.
Yeah. I have like 8 songs right now. I gotta write like 2 or 3 more.
I have like 8, but I'm thinking about just making it like an EP or a side A. So then I can take another 10 years to do side B.
Well, yeah. Mine will probably end up being 9 because I can't get to 10.
Yeah.
It'll probably be something like that. But,
yeah.
It's like, you go through your voice memos. That's I don't know, that's how I record my demos. And you just go through, it's like, man, this is 6 years ago at this point.
I know, it goes quick.
It's
too.
Ridiculous,
It goes really quick.
It's like, it's kind of cool. Maybe I should try that.
It's the solo stuff kind of takes a back seat because it's like, well, if I do this, then people are going to want me to play out live. Then what am I going to do? Then my backup band's going to be the same guys that are on all the B-side stuff anyway. Right. So it's like, why not just be the B-sides, or whatever. But I don't know. I think it's easy for us to kind of make the decisions for the artists that come in.
Yeah.
But it's a bitch. I always heard like Daniel and Wah had a really, like, he produces everybody so great except his own stuff.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And that's what I heard. I mean, I don't know if that's the truth or not because I'm not.
Some of his records are pretty cool.
Yeah, his own stuff. I'm not really familiar with a lot. I'm familiar with a lot of stuff that he's recorded and produced, but not his solo stuff. Although I did hear a little bit of that new piano record that he did, and I thought that was great.
Yeah.
So maybe he's figuring that out, but it takes a while.
He's a texture master, that guy.
Yeah, he is.
So they're all going to sound cool. Brian Eno's records are similar in that way, where I feel like they sound like Brian Eno records. The songwriting, you wouldn't really know because you didn't know what a Brian Eno record would sound like, but it sounds like his production style for sure. So same with Daniel.
One record that I loved of Brian Eno's is Music for Airports.
Yeah.
It's so cool. A lot of people don't even know about it.
It's a great record.
Yeah. It's just this simple piano things that repeat, and it actually was made to play in airports because people get stressed out, and they just figured if they played this in the background, everybody would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite worked out though.
No,
I know you've seen airports recently, but
Anyway.
Well, thank you guys.
Thanks for setting this up.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure. Nice idea.
Yeah, it's fun.
I was thinking too, it would be really fun to reciprocate this for you. I think that both of us, you should come in and do the same song at both studios.
Hilarious.
Oh, that would be fun.
I love it.
And you don't say what he's doing, and I don't say what you're doing, and this and that, and you come in, whether it be just an acoustic thing or you got a drummer or whatever, and just lay down a track, and you go away and we mix it and go, here's your song, let's see what they sound like.
I like that.
That would be fun.
Like, one of your all-time favorite songs that you wrote that means something to you, that you felt like you never really recorded it properly or whatever.
You mean every song?
Well, or when I don't mean that, not like as an engineer, I mean like maybe you always heard drums or a bass or something else on it where you come in with an idea and, individually we sculpt it, help you sculpt it.
That'd be fun.
That would be fun. I'll admit that's like super intimidating because now it's one thing to do it at home in your own studio. But now, like, I would have to be good. No. If I'm showing up at one of your places, now I got to be actually good at what I'm doing.
No, I think it would be fun to like have a version of it where we hear it prior to you coming in, and you don't even know what you're getting. Like
that.
Oh, that would be fun.
Well, basically, you come in and go, okay, guess what you're doing? You're only singing this, or you're doing this. Yeah. And we have different musicians that are going to interpret your song in a different way. So you get to like basically go to your own wake. In other words, or mine, you might. That's not where I wanted it, you son of a bitch.
I'm definitely not that way. But
we have similar tastes. When we hung out and did your father-in-law, Mikey's father-in-law's record, we got talking and texting back and forth, like, about songwriting and stuff.
Yeah.
Waylon Jennings, of course, Willie Nelson came up, a song. And, I thought about you actually from this Bonnie Raitt song that won for the best song. And I was like, oh my God, I listened to that. I was just like in the fetal position. I mean, what an amazing, it's a John Prine tribute. That's what that is.
Yeah.
And did you hear it yet?
I haven't heard it yet.
Listen like that. Listen to it, and you'll be bawling.
You mean she wrote it in tribute to John Prine?
I think she used his. I don't know the whole story behind it. She did mention his name, and I think it's basically what he did. She spent time getting into these characters, and it's very personal. It's. I won't give up too much information about it, because I think it's fun to listen to it and understand it. The video shows the words, and right away you know what it's about. Just Like That. It's called Just Like That. But it's one of her best songs that she's ever written. And I think it's just her, and a very simple, very, very simple arrangement. But it's the way she delivers it. She's 73 years old. She's got that tone in her voice. She's got the tone in her hands, and her slide guitar work. And it's unmistakable, Bonnie Raitt, but it's how she delivers it, and it's how she sells it. It's just perfect. And there's so many people that don't know who Bonnie Raitt is. They're complaining because she beat Adele or she beat Taylor Swift.
Oh yeah. Right.
When you hear this, you go, "Oh yeah, that's the song. That should have won." I don't even need to hear the other songs.
Right.
This should have won. And it's very poignant though. It's good. So listen to that, and then you can text me like all the cry emojis.
All right.
Because I know you're an emotional guy. But
is that a compliment?
But it is a compliment.
Yeah, of course. Look who you're around.
Yeah.
But nice. How long ago did I lose this? My mic's been on my lap.
We're blabbing over here.
Yeah. You're gonna have to go back and like a really close mic over.
Yeah.
I have a compressor that's about 12 inches away, so I think if I put that to the 12, that would really do the trick. Yeah.
Yeah, except you'll sound like Tom Waits, though, going through it.
I'll take it.
So tell me more about that.
All right, we're just gonna have to fade the black, because obviously none of us are gonna shut up. So
okay, sorry.
let's just wrap it up so that Josh can do his thing.
Yeah.
And
appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks guys.
Yeah, that's fun.
That was a great idea.
Yeah.
But I do like this idea too.
I love that idea.
As a way to
really fun.